Hi everyone, Diane here. Welcome to my channel, my studio, and I'm glad that you've joined me today. Hope everybody is well, as usual. Today I'm going to be talking about something that I know absolutely nothing about, as usual. I don't know anything about this other than what I have just read and what has been coming naturally to me for some time. This is an interesting thing because today I have come across, just by chance, when I was looking at a review of the Art Nouveau Gansai Tambi paints. I was looking at a review that was done about a year ago by a lady on YouTube, and I disagreed with her, what she says, and I thought, I don't understand this really, because she was talking about something called ETEGAMI. I hadn't ever heard of that really, but I thought I'd do a bit of research. So I went to another woman called Debbie, whose blog is called Dosanko Debbie. It's funny really, because I use Japanese brushes all the time. My Drawwell brushes that I get direct from Mr. Miami in Japan, but I know very little about Japan, except recently it seems as if there's been a lot of interest, and it's not actually all that recent as it turns out. It's been happening for quite a long time. I just hadn't noticed. So anyway, so I read up on this and I wanted to share it with you because a little while ago, Kuretake sent me these paints. They don't send me very much. They haven't actually supplied me with any of my Art Nouveau or my big sets or anything like that, but they did send me these, as well as the graphite and the granulating paints, which we've used, and a lot of people were very interested in. Anyway, so they sent me these, and they call them sumi colors, and what they are is they're basically blocks in the same style as the other Kuretake paints in these nice plastic pans here, which are very large, because you might, if you're painting in the Japanese style, you might want to use a big brush, I suppose. So you can moisten these and have a lot of ink very loose and free and available to you. Anyway, but I didn't know really what to do with them, and I didn't know whether anyone would be very interested in them, because they're something completely different. It's watercolor, and you use a brush to use them, but it's not what you would call colorful, is it? I mean, although these are called red, yellow, green, blue, violet, and brown, similar to the graphite colors and the granulating colors, you can't really tell any difference when you just look at them like that. So you just have to take their word for it. Anyway, so I put them aside and wondered amongst myself whether maybe one day something would come up and I would have a chance to use them. So they're sitting there, and today the chance arose. Last night, just before we went home to bed, Tamsin brought in these mushrooms from the garden. I had said to her the other day, just before I painted the mushrooms that you will have seen recently on the channel, I said to her, have we got any mushrooms in the field? Because it's coming up to that time of year now where mushrooms are abundant. And she said, no, actually, I don't think we have. And there weren't. She went and had a look and there weren't any. But yesterday, suddenly, all of these wonderful things had sprung up overnight. And she said, I thought I would pick them so that you could paint them or just look at them before the dogs ate them or the sheep trampled them. So she brought them in, and aren't they beautiful? They're really lovely. This is a beautiful big one. It's funny how some of them have got these light brown gills and some of them have got darker brown gills. I don't know if they're a different type or whether they are just at different stages of maturity. I'm not an expert on mushrooms. I'm not an expert on anything really. I know a lot of things, but I don't know much about anything. I know a lot of unrelated and unimportant things, but I'm not an expert in anything really, I don't think. Anyway, so those are the mushrooms. Just a disclaimer, if I tell you something that's not correct, don't blame me, because I've only found it online. So I wanted to, therefore, I thought that would be a good subject for my first foray into ETEGAMI. Now, ETEGAMI is apparently Japanese for postcard art, And this art was started in 1873 when the Japanese post office decided to make it inexpensive to send letters at New Year. So people suddenly started to send postcards. So people suddenly started to create postcards, which they sent to one another, and it became a very popular thing at New Year. And then, so that went on. And of course, they were mostly traditional things. And you know, the kind of thing with the Mount Fuji or the cherry blossom or the things like the tiger and the horse and all of those symbols of astrology that they use for their years. So they were like that. And then in 1960, a chap called Kunio Koike decided to break free from the restrictions of those days. And he said, I'm going to invent something slightly different. And he invented ETEGAMI, which is where you take a piece of relatively lightly sized or unsized card, postcard size, unsized. When I say unsized, I mean untreated, so that sizing, when you apply it to the paper rather than the size of the paper, the dimensions, sizing is when you put a substance based on gelatin usually, but there are other types, on the paper in order to stop it from bleeding badly. And I don't mean bleeding as in blood, I mean bleeding as in blending, bleeding as in paint moving in the surface of the paper. Now, most watercolor paper that we have in the West is heavily sized and the bleeding is controlled. In Japan and presumably China, they use a lot of unsized paper that is not the size of the dimensions, the size of the gelatin, and that means that the paint will bleed or the ink will bleed a lot more. So you have to be much more direct and careful about how you use your ink or paint. But I'm going to try this out today on, this is a piece of Etival cellulose paper, which is sized in the normal way because I'm not brave enough. And I think I will, and I actually can't lay my hands on some unsized paper at the moment, but I know I've got some somewhere. So this for my first trial, I'm going to use paper I'm familiar with. This is actually my first trial, and that's on the same kind of paper. But I didn't film that, so I'm going to have to do it again to show you. So I'm sure you understand why I'm using sized paper for this, and knowing full well that you're not supposed to. You're supposed to use unsized paper, but not necessarily extremely unsized, maybe slightly unsized or very unsized, depending on what effect you want. So that's all open to discussion, you see. So there we are. And now, in order to do ETEGAMI, you need a few things. You need a brush. And I happen to have, because somebody gave this to me a long time ago, a set of 3 Japanese or Chinese calligraphy brushes. And I think these would be absolutely perfect for this. I've got 3 sizes. This is the size that I think I will use. And they came in a nice little case. And I'm pretty sure that you could buy this online if you were to look for it. And I will look for something like that. And if I can find it, I'll put a link. Then we've got sumi-e paints. And I have got I picked out 3 colors because I'm going to paint the mushrooms from the Art Nouveau set, 3 colors of beige, with which I'm going to make an attempt to come close to those colors there. So you're supposed to select a couple of colors like that. You're supposed to have a brush, the paper, the ink, and what else have I got written down? Line drawing brush, that will be this one. Coloring brush, you can use any brush. The ink, the paint, the paper, that's it. Okay, so another thing that's important about this, and you'll find actually that, as I did, most of the principles of ETEGAMI painting are the principles that I've been hammering on about since we started the channel. They are actually the principles which motivate my kind of art, because I'm not very keen on preparatory sketches and I like to paint direct, and I do deal with a lot of running and bleeding and movement of water and paint on the paper, and I always say follow the paint and let the water do the work and things like that, and those are all principles of ETEGAMI as well. And then something else that is one of the main principles of ETEGAMI is that you should be painting things that you can see. And actually, that is what my principle for Sketchtember this month is. I'm asking people to paint or draw, sketch something each day that they actually have in front of them. You know, whether it's your coffee cup or a mushroom, paint from life. Because painting from photos, we are all trying to combat this AI invasion, which is going to destroy the world if we don't resist. So one of the things that you can do is actually open your eyes and look at the things that are really in front of you, and not things that are in a book, or no, not books are okay, not photographs online, not pictures online, because we can't trust them anymore. That's just my opinion. Don't beat me up about it. It's my opinion. It's right or wrong, I don't know, but I do feel that we are under some kind of attack by AI. Okay, so in front of me I have these mushrooms, and the principles behind ETEGAMI is that you keep it simple, and that first of all what you do is you do the drawing in ink, and you do that using the traditional vertical approach where you hold the brush perpendicular. That is to say, if the paper is like that, the brush should be like that, not like that or like that, but literally coming straight down onto the paper. So that's the idea. So we have no preparatory drawing. We're going to make sure we leave a lot of space around the picture that we're doing, because we need to do some writing, because that's the other thing about ETEGAMI. There should be a message on there. And on this one, I wrote the message, no, not mushroom in here. Just trying to be mildly amusing, you know, can't help it. And they say, the chap who invented this idea, Kunio Koike, I don't know if they're still alive or whether he has gone to a better place. But anyway, the idea was that the words should be written in the most simple way that you could possibly do it, not fancy calligraphy, not tidy, just simple block letters, and that you should then also put your little chop on the bottom there if you haven't got one of these machines like this. Carve something into the end of an eraser and use that instead. So there we are. Okay, I think I've been talking enough now. You're probably bored to death, and if you're still there, I'm going to make my brush wet. I'm going to pick up some paint. I'm going to start with this one here. And I'm very unfamiliar with this paint, so I'm not at all sure how this is going to work. This is completely, what's the word? Well, spontaneous. I'm going to have to sit down, otherwise I can't see my mushrooms. So I'm going to sit down, and I'm holding the brush vertical, perpendicular to the paper. And I think you're supposed to hold your elbow up in the air as well, so that your wrist is free to move. So we'll see how that works. Okay, so I think I'll start at the bottom of the mushroom, and we'll go up. And another thing that it says in this article that I read about this technique is that even if you actually want to tear your effort up when you've done it, you shouldn't, because every ETEGAMI painting should be sent to a friend or someone. I don't know if it actually has to be a friend or whether it could be, you know, an acquaintance. But anyway, you shouldn't throw them away. You should give them away. So I'm trying to draw a mushroom here, and then I'm going to indicate some of the gills using the tip of the brush. So that's one mushroom, and then I'm going to do another one here. Let's have this one. Oops, lift my elbow up. It definitely reduces the amount of control that you have. which is fine. Might want to make that a bit darker. And then we could put one of these little tiny ones here. Put another one over here. Lift up your elbow. There we are. So it's fun. And the idea, it says here, is that your painting should be spontaneous, honest, and personal. And the idea is that you are hoping that this, when you send it to your friend or your enemy, that they are going to be, with any luck, stimulated and inspired, or amused or comforted. So that's what you're aiming for. So that's why I wrote, and I'm going to write it again, not mushroom in here. There we are. Got mushroom in here. And so the next thing is to dry it and then colour it in. So I'll just wash off my brush. And then you're supposed to use, I think I could probably use the same brush, but you're supposed to use Gansai Tambi paints, which are apparently, I didn't know this, but apparently they are particularly suitable for working on unsized paper. So that concept has just suddenly jumped out at me over the last couple of days. I've seen it in a couple of places. I don't have a problem with this paint, the Gansai Tambi paint, on regular watercolor paper. I've not had a problem at all. In fact, if anything, I think it works brilliantly, and I think a lot of other people would agree with me. So anyway, that's the reason why it's thicker, because I think the idea is that because it's thicker, it doesn't move as much. Maybe it's a bit more controllable on the unsized paper. So I'm just going to put the hairdryer on this. I don't think it would really matter if there was a little bit of running. And I think I could probably use the same brush, actually. I don't see any reason why not. And I'm going to paint the underside in the darkest of these colours. And we'll see how that looks. And the top side in a slightly lighter colour. And these ones are quite pale, so we'll colour those in down here. And I think actually it looks quite nice if you get a bit of running like that. And then the stem like that. I feel as if that ought to be a little bit darker. So I'm just going to take a bit of that and try to, oh my goodness, it's very, very strong. The ink is unbelievably strong. So I can darken this a bit. Okay. And as it says, you know, it should be very spontaneous and not laboured in any way. And the idea is to just drop the paint into the area that you've drawn and let it do its own thing. And then you can take your little red ink pad, which is very sticky, and your chalk, which that's supposed to say my name on it. I don't know if it does or not. I ordered that on Etsy. And press down, because otherwise it doesn't print very well. So put that there. It's probably upside down. I'm feeling it might be. But I don't mind, because I can't read Chinese or Japanese or any other ease. So that's that. And, you know, you could put a few spatters on there if you wanted to, couldn't you? You could definitely. I'm going to just indicate a little bit of shadow underneath. And I'm going to write, I'm going to put not mushroom in here, a couple of lines there. And so that's that. And yeah, I'm not going to play with it anymore. I think that will do. So there we are, ETEGAMI. Not about looking good. It's the whole principle is that you're not doing this to show off. You're doing it to help the receiving person, the person who catches your card when you send it to them, and to make them smile. So if you think something mildly funny to say, that's the idea. I don't know whether that's funny or not, but anyway, it's just what came into my head. So there we are. It's interesting, isn't it? I think I would honestly suggest it would be great fun to give that a try. Don't worry about not having any unsized paper. It doesn't matter if you just use ordinary paper. I'm sure nobody is going to knock on your door and send around the sizing police. So, yeah, I think that's actually really fun. So I'm going to do another one. I'm going to do the other thing I've got in front of me is flowers. So I've got this flower, just a sec. I think this is it's an osteospernum is what it's called. So it looks a bit like a gerbera or whatever. It's just a fancy daisy, really. Now let's see how that works. It's going to be a little bit more difficult because there's a lot more detail, but I'll just do the, and if you don't feel able to hold your arm up, I don't think you need to worry about that precluding you from doing this kind of painting, because I'm not very what's the word, strong in the elbow front, so it's not, I think I'll put my elbow down, in other words, because when you get old, you can't do these kinds of things so easily, can you? So I'm going to put another stem up here, and then I'm going to put another one here. I am trying to do it in an uncontrolled fashion. It reminds me of that book, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. I think that's the one where she tells you to paint using your other hand, your non-dominant. Anyway, yeah, don't you think this is fun? ETEGAMI with a T. I'll put as many links as I can think of in the description below so you can look it up. And to me, the thing that is fascinating about this is that it embodies all of the principles that I believe in. And I didn't even know it existed. I didn't even know there was such a thing as ETEGAMI until this morning. But it turns out that that is my way of painting. Really, I think you could say. It's funny, my very first job after I left school, well, no, my second job after I left school, was working in a Japanese bank in London, the Dai-ichi Kangyo Bank, who later bought the Midland Bank, which was my first job when I left school. I worked for the Midland Bank, and then I went to work for the Dai-ichi Kangyo Bank. So I have quite fond memories of Japanese people from then, although I didn't stay there very long because I got married. Right, so I'm going to write something on here, and this, as I said, is an osteospernum. So what shall I write? Little flower, big heart. Oh yeah. And we'll need our little chop. Let's see if I can get it the right way out this time. I think it goes that way. Do they call it chop because when you chop? There we are, Diane Antone. I think that's what that says. Okay, I should have actually coloured them in first, shouldn't I? Just a second, we'll do that and then I'll let you go. And I hope you're going to be interested to explore ETEGAMI a little bit. These colours aren't really what I would call bright, so we'll go to our big set. And I think what we need is Rose Madder Deep. This one here, and we won't use much. I'm going to take a smaller brush for this, and I'll just yeah. Just put some purple into some of those leaves there. And question is then, I always wonder whether or not I should use green for the leaves. Let's just use a tiny bit like that. Okay. I'm going to leave you there. Little osteospernum. And yeah, well, I hope you enjoyed that. I'm sure some of you will have heard of ETEGAMI, and I'm sure quite a few of you will. And there used to be a lady that was one of our quite active followers who was trying hard to master the art of ETEGAMI and sumi-e painting, but I haven't heard from her for a very long time, and I'm rather worried that maybe something's happened to her. We have lost a couple of people, two at least, I know, over the last few years, well, over the last few months, actually. Yeah, a lady from England and a lady from America have both passed on, and it's very hard, actually. We miss them. Anyway, RIP, as they say. So there we are. We have our mushrooms and our flower and an experience for the day. So have fun. I'll see you soon. Don't forget to visit our website. Don't forget to join Patreon or to subscribe to YouTube and all the other things. And check in the description below for information about anything that you've seen me using here that you might be interested in. And I'll see you again soon. So I'll say bye-bye for now, everybody. Bye-bye.